Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of our biweekly webinar series. I'm Dr. George Ozoude of Time Health Capital, and with Dr. Fasanya of Dr. Breathe Easy Capital, we are both your hosts. This evening, we are excited to bring on Dr. Julius of XSITE Capital. In addition to being an accomplished and renowned surgeon at Johns Hopkins University, Julius is CEO and co-founder at XSITE Capital. He is a friend of ours who I personally had the pleasure of knowing for 15 years now, since he was an intern and I was a med student sub-intern in New York City. So since that time, we've come to discover our shared interests again, but now in real estate in the investing space. And his activity in the space is evident and speaks for itself. Prior to XSITE, Julius has focused on single-family rentals and angel investing. Over the past several years, he has invested in over 50 startups and currently sits on the advisory board of 4 healthcare startups. And then since then, Julius and his team at XSITE Capital have come together and experienced a very efficient growth in the multifamily residential syndication space. Within the last 2 to 3 years, I would say he has led the acquisition of more than $100 million of multifamily assets and counting. So all of this is on top of his full-time position as a hip and knee replacement surgeon in Baltimore, Maryland, and many philanthropic and business endeavors over in Nigeria. So Julius, obviously we are thrilled to host you this evening and looking forward to learning from your experience. I will let you take it from here. You're on the stage.
Thank you so much, George. Really appreciate it. It's unbelievable how time flies. And yeah, it's certainly an honor and a great pleasure to be on this platform and to be interacting with the wonderful folks in the audience. Thank you to you and Adebayo for this initiative. This is great. We need more and more of us doing this. I'm going to dive right in and hopefully leave some time for some questions at the end of this. If I am going through a little fast on some of the slides, please feel free to slow me down if you need to in the audience. And certainly feel free to put your questions in the chat too, because we will take those questions at the end of the presentation. So let's dive right in. I will be talking to you today just a little bit about my experience investing in the last several years, and hopefully also speak to some of the pain that I've seen us go through as healthcare professionals, and how we can hopefully start to convert that pain to pleasure with regards to investing. Disclaimer, I'm only board certified in orthopedic surgery. So I always tell people the only thing I'm licensed to do is to replace hips and knees and maybe do a little bit of trauma and a few other things, but I'm not board certified or licensed financial or investment professional. So feel free to double check anything that I say with those professionals as necessary. Why am I the one presenting to you today? I would say I completed my residency in 2012, so going into my 11th year of practice now. And since then, did the typical thing of maxing out retirement accounts on a yearly basis. Between 2015 and 2020, I invested in a few startups as an angel investor. And in that same time, I also accumulated a small single-family portfolio in Philadelphia, and also did some maybe arbitrage in Chicago. And in 2020, I became the CEO of a multifamily real estate private equity company. And since then, we've accumulated an asset under management of $168 million. And I'll tell you how we did that. I also consult for Zimmer, who makes the hips and knees that I put in people. And also was a co-founder of a nonprofit, the way we replace people's hips and knees in Nigeria. I also am an equity partner in a few businesses. And officially in 2022, thankfully made more income outside of medicine than within medicine. That was a big milestone for me because 3 years ago, that was one of my goals in 5 years, but I was able to do it in 3. So I'm really proud of that. My assumption is that you want to grow your wealth as quickly as feasible. You want to keep your tax liability as low as legally possible, and that you have the goal of financial freedom, and I will define that. Financial freedom to me is the ability to do whatever I want with whoever I want for as long as I want in whatever place of my choosing, without having to think about how I was going to meet my expenses on a monthly, daily, quarterly basis. And this is some pictures that just It tells me a little bit about, describes a little bit about what I feel like when I'm thinking about financial freedom. And but truly, to achieve financial freedom, you really have to educate yourself. The journey to financial freedom really starts with education. And one of the myths that we have as healthcare professionals is that you can become financially free by just maxing out your retirement account. Yeah, we'll bust that myth real shortly. The other myth is you can save enough until you're financially free. Nope, you can never save your way to wealth. The other myth is that you just need to outsource the planning of your financial future to a financial advisor. Those people are a fiduciary. They're always going to watch out for your best interest. And you just have to worry about that, meet with them, and hopefully they'll create the life of your dreams for you in retirement. That is not necessarily true. And the other myth is that the harder you work, the more money you make. A lot of us already know that is not true, but we will definitely be dealing with that myth also. And the other aspect of that is that the more hours you work equals more compensation. That's usually the way we've traditionally thought about it. That is not right. That's not true for the vast majority of wealthy folks. So this is where just some examples of things that you can start reading to really understand how to be more financially responsible, how to create a financial plan for yourself that you can take on, consider, and use this as your guide to achieving financial freedom. White Coat Investor is a classic, but I personally think that the platform is a little more conservative than my personal preference, but I think it's always a good start just to tell you a little bit about all the different ways to invest or approach investing as a healthcare professional. And this is some of the other tax-free wealth. It's a little bit of a tough read, but it goes into a lot of details about how the different ways that you can take advantage of the tax code to maximize your wealth growth. So education is key. This is some of the resources listed over there. I love to read. I love to listen to a lot of podcasts. How I built this on NPR particularly, I just love listening to like a lot of founders talk about their journey from inception to execution. That's one of my all-time favorites. And Wheelbarrow Profits is a great one for anyone interested in multifamily real estate and psychology of money. It's a nice baseline education on just how to think about money in general. And the ultimate goal of all of this, though, of educating yourself is so that you can create a financial roadmap and set ambitious goals for yourself. Because without knowing exactly where you want to go, you're never going to get there. If you do not have a destination, you're just going to keep circling around and you're going to be more susceptible to all the new and shining things when you don't really have a focus. So that's the goal. So typically they tell us to become a doctor, surgeon, healthcare professional, max out your 401k, invest in some stocks and bonds, mostly real estate products, not real estate products, Wall Street products, rather. When you start getting a little more sophisticated and talk about the backdoor IRAs and Roth IRAs, but that's limited in what you can do with that sometimes. And then there's the classic college savings plan, the disability insurance, life insurance, and financial professionals, especially financial advisors, typically they love selling you insurance, obviously because it's commission-based and certainly adds significantly to their bottom line. But the truth about retirement accounts is this: it's designed mainly to be invested in Wall Street for the most part. And doctors are usually retiring now with about $2 to $5 million in their retirement accounts. That sounds like a lot of money to some people. But if you want to maintain the quality of life that you have achieved as a working doctor or as a working healthcare professional, in many ways, that is not necessarily going to get you the life that you want. $2-3 million when you're able to only access about 4% of it, that's usually the average you're able to. It's not. You could do the calculation. That's not a lot of money compared to what you've been able to make as a doctor. So the assumption, typically they'll tell you as financial advisors, they'll say, you know what, your income is going to be much lower when you retire. Remember, that's what they say. And so you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. So all this pre-tax retirement accounts, you'll be able to be taxed at a much lower level. But I bet you when you're thinking about retirement, you're not thinking about, man, I'm going to have to step down and I have to readjust my life to match this lower income that I'm going to have. A lot of us still think, man, I want to still be able to leave at the same level that I lived. And the only way to really do that, to be honest with you, you're going to have to start thinking about how to make your money work for you, not just have you work for yourself. So as you work for yourself and you start saving and you start accumulating some wealth, now you got to start make that money work for you too. And we'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing that really hampers your ability to live the life of your dreams in retirement is the fact that with average inflation, especially for those that are just starting practice, that you expect to have a 30-year run in medicine, with average inflation of 3%, your purchasing power is divided by half in 24 years. So what you're going to be able to buy for $100 today you'll be able to buy the same thing for about $200 in about 24 years with an average inflation of 3%. And you think about the inflation right now, it's 6, 7, 8%, or the Fed is obviously trying to tame it, but you get the picture. You cannot just depend on your retirement account to achieve your wealth goals. I can't say this enough. If you forget everything else, just remember, you cannot save your way to wealth. And this is another thing. The banks, they love when you bring that money in and save it in the bank, because guess what? They take that same money that you just deposited in the bank. They put it to work. They make anything from 4% to 30% on that same money. And if you're nice to them, maybe they'll give you 0.09%, maybe 1% on it. If you're really smart, maybe you're able to get an account with 4%, but that's about it. The arbitrage on your money is what they love. But that's why they will give you that private banking client services once you start accumulating and getting a few $100,000 in the account. That's why they meet you at the door and walk you right into the back. You feel real nice and important. That's because you're one of their wonderful investors, except that you're not getting the return. The good news is, as doctors, it's not all bad news. Most of us will be in the 1%, and that's roughly defined as over $500,000 in annual income. We're going to be rich by most standards, but most of us are not going to be wealthy because we just don't think about wealth in that sense. And I will tell you some of the reasons why most of us are not wealthy. Generally, we're smart people, so that's a good thing. We worked hard, went to med school, went to residency in other type of healthcare professional. You went to undergrad, you went to professional school. We mostly smart people, and we're generally respected in society. Those are all good things. But the problem with us is we are just highly paid skilled workers. That's what we are. And the quicker you start to embrace that fact, the quicker you're going to start thinking about more creative ways of not just being defined as a skilled worker. Yes, we have very highly sought after skills, but we just paid nicely for the work that we do. And a lot of our work requires us to actually show up and engage on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. We essentially have to trade our hours for dollars. And so anytime you have to trade your hours for dollars, even if you're getting paid $1,000, $2,000 for that hour, there's always going to be some limitation to your income because you only have 24 hours in a day. And most of us like to sleep at least 4 to 8 hours of that 24 hours. So your time, your amount of money that you can make, regardless of the dollar per hour average, is capped if you just depend on trading your hours for dollars. We are also usually in the highest tax bracket typically. And so we subject to some significant tax burden. And that's why the government loves us, because obviously before we can even get our check, that they've taken their 30, 40. I remember back when I was in Philly, I calculated everything from federal, state taxes to Social Security, Medicare. And there was one other tax. Oh, county. So cities, federal, state, county. And when I combined everything, it was 51.4%. I was like, wow, that means I'm just working for the government until maybe midday Wednesday. And then maybe a little past maybe 1 p.m. or something like that on Wednesday, that's when I'm actually working for myself. So that was a big reality check there. But yeah, and we also have high student loan burden. A lot of us have taken anything from $100,000 to $400,000 in loans from undergrad to med school. And we also suffer from lifestyle creep. We've delayed gratification. We've suffered for so long. We've seen all our friends get houses, get cars, get married, do all these things. We've been suffering in the trenches. And then when you finally get that first job, you go buy the biggest house you can. You buy the nicest car you can. You want to look, feel, show up like a doctor or like a pharmacist, like a dentist, whatever it is whatever healthcare professional you are, like a CRNA. You want to show that you finally arrived. That is one of as your income increases, you essentially increase your expenses to match that income. That's one of the killers of wealth for healthcare professionals. And it's not our fault. We really don't have much financial education. So it's tough to blame us for doing it. And so it's interesting. I looked at this Medscape physician debt and net worth report, and it shows that in the US, and at least in 2020, and it's not much better now, 50% of doctors have less than $1 million in net worth. And this particular survey actually included the homes. Usually when you calculate net worth, you can't include your home in that net worth, the equity you have in your home. But this actually included that. And this 50%, just think about it, 50% has a net worth of less than 1 million. 92% has a network of less than 5 million. And only about 8% has a net worth of greater than $5 million. So and remember what I said earlier, even 5 million in retirement accounts is still, it's not necessarily going to help you to live your life, the life of your dreams, depending on what you like to do. It's important to define what net worth is. It's assets minus liabilities. Assets is anything that puts money in your pocket. If you've listened to anything that Robert Kiyosaki has ever written or said, this is a really simple, nice way to define it. Anything that puts money in your pocket, assets. Anything that takes money out of your pocket, liabilities. So cash, assets. Investments, assets. Real estate, assets. Investment businesses you co-own, assets. Liabilities, anything that takes money away from you. So student loans, any bank debt, and your mortgage on your house, that's a liability. Taxes owed, all your life expenses, your car note, your child's education budget, your after-school budget, all of that, those are all liabilities. Over the last 2 centuries, 90% of the millionaires got their wealth from real estate, or at least maintained their wealth in real estate, or a significant portion of it in real estate. Couldn't really find exactly where that was attributed to, but that's a quote that you see all the time, and it makes a lot of sense. The average US millionaire has 7 sources of income. That's actually from a IRS publication, and I'll show you all those 7 sources of income shortly. So maybe, hopefully, to stir up your juices and get you to start thinking about ways to achieve those levels of income. And once again, you see, I keep coming back to this same fact. You cannot save your way to wealth. So if you forget everything else, please do not forget that. So the 7 sources, and this is the IRS publication is down there if you want to actually click it and read the entire thing. Investment income, that's the first one. That's dividend income from like stocks owned, and the earned income is like it's the one that almost all of us, we have. You either self-employed, or you work for an hospital system or something, or you work in a private practice, you get a paycheck from your contracted employment. Rental income, a lot of us, we also have access to that, in the sense that most people know at least about single family homes, rent it out, get some money from that, and hopefully you can get a little bit of profit once you've paid off all your expenses on the rental property. Royalty income is another one that we don't really think about a lot, but for a lot of people that are just hardcore academic or just decided not to necessarily venture significantly outside of medicine. Sometimes they could write something, write a book, they could invent like a device or medical device. They could be on a design team for one of the major equipment company. And this is a great way to make passive income. This is one of those fantastic income that is not connected to the amount of time or effort that you put into it. It's completely disjointed from that. And sometimes you're sleeping and waking up and still making money. That is a fantastic source of income. Capital gains. This is when you sell. This is income from selling appreciated assets. So it could be real estate, it could be stocks, it could be art, it could be whatever it is. If it's increased in value, then the income that you get from that appreciated asset, you pay capital gains. It's either short-term or long-term capital gains taxes on that. And profits. This is when you invest in businesses, you co-own a business, and whatever the profits that come from that, you guys split it in accordance to the proportion of the business that you own. That's another great way to make passive income because it's disconnected from you having to trade your house for dollars. And interest income is another great way. This one, almost all of us get to participate in. If you have a savings account, you're certainly getting this. It's just really low. It's usually about less than 1% or around 1%, maybe 2% for the really great savings accounts. But this is like the kind of interest income that we are familiar with. So most people have earned income, they have interest income, and sometimes they start venturing out into getting rental income. And then for those people that love stocks, they have a little bit of investment income. So those are the four most common ones. The ones that you have to start to think outside of the box to get: the capital gains income, the royalty income, and the profits from businesses that you own. Those are some of the things that you got to start thinking about, even as a healthcare professional. So those are some of those ones that I've been able to access so far. Unfortunately, I don't have any royalty incomes yet, but if you have some great ideas for me, please, let's work on it and let me get the seventh source of income. Excellent. So it's important also not to just think about your wealth in the form of net worth. The world is filled with a lot of people with a very high net worth, but with very low cash flow. If you do not have the cash flow and your net worth is just tied in illiquid assets, then it's still really hard to live the life of your dreams. Maybe you will get to live the life of your dreams down the road, but so it's important to also think about it as net worth, cash flow. And cash flow usually comes in a form of passive income, which is defined as when you invest in an opportunity or investment that yields positive returns without any additional input funds or work from you, the investor. And so when your passive income exceeds your basic expenses, you've essentially financially secure. But there's different levels to it. Yes, when your passive income covers your basic expenses, you're financially secure. You can sit at home and you can know that, you know what, at least my basic expenses are going to be taken care of. But the next level is when your passive income then covers your current lifestyle. It covers if you like to fly business class, you like to take 3, 4, 5 vacations a year, you like to donate to like your charity of choice at a significant level, you like to spend quite a bit of time with family and things of that nature. When your passive income can cover that current lifestyle comfortably, that's what we call financial independence. Freedom, the passive income should cover your ideal lifestyle. So that would be different for some people. For people who are like low key, maybe that is their current lifestyle. For people who really want to live the life of their dreams, you want to fly in that private jet, you want to have a yacht, you want to be able to invite your entire medical school class to your private island. Now when your passive income is able to achieve that ideal lifestyle, that is financial freedom. And that definition is very different for everybody. But you have to know you, and you have to understand what that is for you. I would consider myself as having achieved financial independence, because for me, my ideal lifestyle is still what I'm working on. But cash flow quadrant, if you've ever read anything from Robert Kiyosaki, you would have seen this quadrant. Our goal as healthcare professionals is to try to go from the left side of that quadrant to the right side of the quadrant. You want to move from being an employee or being self-employed to being a business owner, even if you're a business owner of the business where you're self-employed in. So a lot of us, even when you have private practices and things like that, you're still self-employed. You're still paying yourself some salary, and you still have to. Your time is essentially still equal to the money, and you're still trying to. The amount of work that you do still determines your income. And same with employees. But as business owners, no, now that's connected. Your income is not necessarily associated with just your active work. You could think of ways to like essentially scale. Same thing with an investor. An investor can invest in like 100 things if they have the resources to, and their income is completely not dependent on the actual work that they put in. So my experience is that, just like I said earlier, maxed out my retirement. I do the backdoor Roth IRA on a yearly basis. I have a small brokerage account to manage by a financial advisor, just because I like to still cover my bases. I want to, when it's such that even if I failed in all of my alternative investments, that I would still land somewhere close to where the average person is. Yeah. So for me, that's important to cover those bases. Some people are even way more aggressive. They've moved everything outside of brokerage accounts, outside of stocks, outside of retirement accounts into alternative investments. That's not me, but you have to know who you are. I did my disability insurance, so at least I could get 60% of what I make right now if something was to happen to me. And single family investment properties, I have a few of them in Philly. The cash flow wasn't that impressive, but it's decent and it works. And then my angel investments over time, I'm actually happy to say that I will be exiting out of Helium Health later within the next couple of weeks. So that's a fantastic one. Yeah, but these are things that I continue to work on over time. And I'm happy to go into significant details if people want to get more details about that once the questions start. But for me, despite having all of these different things, I felt like the angel investments were really high risk, high reward. So that was not a source of consistent cash flow. The single family properties was giving cash flow, but it was very relatively low cash flow. You would have to scale them to hundreds of them for the cash flow to be acceptable, at least for me. And all of these other things are just, they protecting the basis or the foundation, but they're not necessarily supplying the consistent cash flow. And that's what got me interested in thinking about other asset classes that were going to be able to provide the cash flow and also provide the asset appreciation. And that's what multifamily real estate did for me. So in early 2020, when COVID hit, instead of watching Netflix and just sitting around, I started reading a whole lot about multifamily real estate and just did a deep dive into it. And around that same time, discovered that, man, I started going to a lot of virtual conferences at that point, and I could tell that in those rooms, I was seeing a lot of CPAs, a lot of lawyers, a lot of business people, a lot of engineers, even a lot of people outside of healthcare. And so I was like, this is interesting. And then I also was seeing a lot of people that were like, the folks I was seeing in the rooms were pretty homogeneous. I didn't see a lot of minorities. And so I was like, man, there's got to be a gap here to take the education that I'm gaining from all of these conferences to our community. And so I was lucky enough to partner with two dynamic individuals who actually, one of them was the one who introduced me to multifamily real estate. And it was the one it was essentially my sensei through this entire process, and shared a lot of the information he had gotten. And I was like, listen, let's all put our forces together and take the gospel of multifamily real estate to our communities, our professional communities and our home communities. So healthcare professionals, minorities, and that was the goal. And that's exactly what we've done in the last 3 years. We've pooled equity from small investors, mainly healthcare professionals and underrepresented minority professionals, and acquired cash flowing multifamily real estate. I still continue to max out my retirement. I still do my dollar cost averaging into crypto that I don't think about, Bitcoin and Ethereum, just so that I don't feel the FOMO when Bitcoin goes back up to $100,000 and things like that. But that's less than 5% of my portfolio. I could care less about what happens to that. You have to know yourself. You have to know exactly what, and I do the same thing with some mutual funds too. I think it's a little, okay, there you go. So it's all about calculated risks, people. Without risks, there's no reward. Just know that. So risk taking is fundamental to sound investing. And so if you're saying, oh, I just don't know enough about this. So learn, invest in yourself to learn about whatever the asset class is.
You need to go, TP? I asked you, did you need to go?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's as simple as the law of supply and demand. Without risk, there's no reward. Now, some things are like low risk, high reward. Some things are like high risk, high reward. Some things are like high risk, low reward. Obviously, you want to try your best to go for as many investment as low risk and high reward as possible. And I consider real estate one of those, in the sense that they're below average risk and there's above average returns overall in real estate. When you compare real estate in general to the stock market over the last 30 years, 40 years, whatever the metric time horizon is, real estate has always outperformed the stock market. So traditional real estate investment, let's just talk a little bit about the ones that people always talk about, like single family rentals. We already talked about that. Flips, and single family rentals also actually require you to be relatively active, engaging with your tenants and things of that nature, making sure that they are getting everything that they need. And if you're not going to do that, you're going to have to pay a property manager to do that, which reduces your cash flow. Flips are another option. Flips are like you go in, you buy something really cheap, you renovate it, you flip it. The idea there is that you're getting your profit, you're doing all of that within a year. BR, this BRRRR strategy, you buy, you rehab, you rent it, you refinance, you pull your money out, you do it again. I think this is something that has been popularized recently, and some people do it. Once again, it requires your active participation. Short-term rentals. A lot of doctors do this. They get a home, maybe a home they were using before they convert to an Airbnb. There's some great strategies there, actually, to still achieve some really significant tax benefits and things of that nature, even with short-term rentals. But once again, somewhat requires your active participation. And then small multifamily is the other one. Small multifamily is anything less than 4 units. If it has more than 4 units, it's considered commercial multifamily. Okay, so that's the demarcation right there. So anything from a quad down, that is still small multifamily. 5 units up, that's considered commercial multifamily. So why multifamily real estate? Why do I love this asset class? First thing, as a busy professional, you could still do the things that you love to do. You could still be a pathologist, a pharmacist, an orthopedic surgeon, an anesthesiologist. And if you truly love it, that's your passion, you could continue to do it. You could just put your money to work by investing with experienced professionals in multifamily real estate. You get monthly and quarterly cash flow. Remember when I talked about net worth and cash flow? It also solves for that problem. You invest in this thing, it's like investing in a business, and you get cash flow either on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. It's resistant. You've seen what's happened with recessions, with the recession that we're currently in, and real estate values. Yes, it's gone down a little bit, but it's definitely not tanked. It's not lost 30, 40% of its value like stocks has. And it's not yo-yoed back and forth like crypto has. It's literally just maintained its relative value. Now, as much transactions going on right now with escalating interest rates, with the macroeconomic conditions that we find ourselves in? No. But is it still dynamic? Is it still a great asset class to invest in? Absolutely. And it's also trusted by the best. Wall Street, your life insurance companies, they're all investing in multifamily real estate. And it's also associated with below average risk, like I talked about, and above average returns. And the extraordinary tax benefits, I cannot say enough about that. We don't have enough time for me to go into the details of cost segregation and how that just like completely changes the game when it comes to offsetting your passive income from even other sources. And if you're able to become a real estate professional, how that could be, that is mind-blowing. I'm a beneficiary of it, and it's incredible to be able to take advantage of the tax benefits of multifamily real estate. It's a tangible asset. You could touch it, you could rub your shoulder on it, you could walk through it. It's right there. It's not going anywhere. You could force appreciation, and we could talk about that. Yeah, and your investment is also protected under the business because it's an LLC that owns the property. And multifamily is about scale. The more units you have, the lower so the 2-bedroom, 2-bath in a multifamily apartment where you have 130 units is going to be much less than your 2-bedroom house down the street. It's just the way it is, because with the scale, and once again, just like I said, it's outperformed stocks for the last several years. What's the syndication again? We pool our resources to purchase an apartment building. I cannot go out and buy a $20 million property right now. But guess what? We've done that with our multifamily real estate syndication company because we were able to essentially bring together people of similar mindsets, people of same core values, who also wanted to be co-owners in these properties. And we pool those resources. And then we go out and get a loan from one of the agencies, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, maybe a bank, to offset the leverage, the amount that we were able to raise from the investors, and use that to buy large multifamily apartments. And the way it works is the general partners acquire the property, raise the capital. The general partners implements the business plan. Active and passive investors enjoy the returns. So general partners and the limited partners both enjoy the investment. And then you sell or hold it, depending on what the business plan is. But I'm not going to go into too much of the details of this because this is the same presentation that you guys have had on this platform multiple times already. So the general partners find the properties, they underwrite the properties, they secure the financing, they raise capital. So they're doing a lot. They're putting the entire team together of lawyers, of brokers, of accountants, of property managers. They essentially the people with the master plan. The limited partners, they invest in the deal, they obtain their share of the profits and their share of the tax benefits. And they don't have to deal with the day-to-day. They don't have to deal with the day-to-day of the property. So structure of a typical syndicated group investment. So multifamily investment properties, we usually get a LLC.
This on the web.
We usually get a the LLC that owns the property. And that LLC then essentially has the general partners and the limited partners all combined under that same LLC. And everybody just buy a fraction of the LLC. That's essentially, it's like fractional ownership of real estate. That's what this is. And so the general partners get paid by getting equity and fees, and the limited partners get paid by getting the equity and the dividends on top. They get cash flow, and then they get their portion of the profits at the end of the deal. Usually, most of our deals usually require accredited investors. That's the definition for an accredited investor there. Target markets, we usually love these types of markets. Stable industry, great communities, great attractions. You can see it there. Target market is actually North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. We look in other places, but this is just an example of a page that shows what some of the metrics that we look for: population growth, like increase in population growth. We're looking for increase in rent growth. We're looking for increase in median household income. We're looking for a booming metro that is essentially projected to continue to grow into the future. And then we could do some cool things with forced appreciation. In the interest of time, I'm going to not spend too much time on this, but this used to be something that we said, oh, this is an example of what we can do. But at XSITE Capital, we actually did this recently where we bought a property, a 132-unit property for $12.5 million, and 21 months later sold it for 17.8, a $5.3 million profit. It translated to about almost 30% average annual returns for the investors and 1.5 equity multiple. So it's mind-blowing what you can do with multifamily real estate. It's incredible to me. And so my approach just was worked for me. An emergency fund of about 100K. That's just based on my personal expenses and requirements of my family. And outside of that, I do some investments in stocks and a little bit in crypto, just like I said, some angel investments and some real estate investments. And also I cover my bottom line by doing some asset protection and estate planning. I'm using some professionals. And then I have some moonshot projects in emerging markets, because those are highest risk, but those are also very associated with significant returns. Your approach may be completely different than this, but you have to know who you are. You have to educate yourself. You have to read. You have to listen to podcasts. You have to really come up with your financial roadmap and really stick with it. And you may make slight adjustments to it, but ultimately your true north is your true north. So what are the different ways that you can, in your current employee position or your self-employed position, start to max out some of your value? You could try to find ways. You should constantly check metrics to see what other people are getting paid in the same practice, in the same city, in the same in similar practice settings. Make sure that you are not leaving money on the table, because if you are, you need to be talking to your employer and exploring. And one of the easiest ways to get an employer to like dance to your music is to interview for a couple of jobs and have a couple of contracts in hand from jobs that are very similar to the job you're currently in. So those employers, and you don't have to be overt about it. Usually what I would do is I'll tell one loudmouth that I know is going to tell the bean counters about my impending contract. And I'll actually show it to them. I'll be like, listen, I have this contract in there and this and this. And I know that person is definitely going to go to the person who's going to make the decision on my contract and be like, listen, this guy's about to leave if you do not make a difference. Or sometimes I would talk to my division chief. And after my division chief, they'll do the advocacy with the chairman. That's in an academic setting. If you're in a private setting, maybe that's something you have with the discussion you have with your partners. There's a discussion you have with the folks around your hospital that's employed you, if you're just an hospital employed person. But the better strategy is, if you have the access to it, the opportunities are few and far in between. But if you're able to innovate, if you're able to think about a problem that you constantly encounter in your daily practice and find ways to solve that problem, guess what? You can now start getting paid royalties for that, for what you just innovated. For if you have a great idea for a book, write a book, try to market it, try to sell it. If you have a great idea for a particular device, meet with people, collaborate, design it. You could also work with the industry as a consultant or design surgeon. You can also do some medical legal work. Unfortunately, that still requires some trading hours for dollars, but you may be able to like improve as you start to get more versed in it. You may be able to start escalating the amount that you get paid per hour, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, whatever it is. You name your price. And if your work is valuable enough, they will pay for it. So all of this is still earned income, obviously, except for royalties or being a consultant, but it's still worth it. In a private group practice, obviously, you want to try to become a partner, buy into the practice, obtain passive incomes. But even that is not the same everywhere. You have to understand the idiosyncrasies of the particular practice settings that you are in so that you don't end up shafting yourself. 5 ways to increase your cash flow net worth: maximize your earned income. Don't leave money on the table. Create a source of portfolio income with stocks, bonds. If you are an avid Netflix person, you watch Netflix all the time, why don't you own a piece of Netflix? At least buy a few Netflix stocks. You already binge a lot of those shows. If you have an Apple phone, why don't you buy a piece of the company? You know, that's a place to start. It's not going to be much initially, but it's a mindset that if you truly believe in a particular company and you think they're going somewhere in the future, just buy it and hold it for a long time. Don't try to do the day trading. That's where you get burned. But if you hold it actually for a long time, you can still actually do pretty well with it too. Anyways, you could create a source of passive income. This is my favorite, with real estate particularly, or taking an equity stake in businesses. Now I'm like super excited. I'm always looking for entrepreneurs in the US and outside of the US, but mostly outside of the US, who are dynamic, and we do evaluation of their company. I get an equity stake in the company, especially if I believe in the founder, because I just know that, yes, they're going to continue to grow. And I also help to facilitate their growth. But that has been a great way for me to create significant passive income, particularly when I'm traveling. I don't have to spend any money from the US. I have enough passive income coming in from just investment in businesses and in other places. So you have to know yourself, understand who you are, and educate yourself about a lot of this sources of passive income, and then go for the one that really fits your particular situation. You also want to optimize your tax efficiency and asset protection and double down in your financial and investment education. I think we talked a lot about that. So I talked about the problem with healthcare professionals. Now let's talk a little bit about the solution. This is pretty much the last slide. Yeah, we're highly paid skilled workers. So accumulate assets instead. Start letting your money work for you. Trading hours for dollars. Try to generate more dollars for those hours that you're putting in as much as you can. Make sure you're not leaving money on the table. Tax burden. Real estate provides great cost segregation, either with a short-term rental approach or with passive investment in multifamily syndications. All these are all ways to reduce your tax burden. High student loan burden. Try to pay them off as soon as possible. But there are so many loan forgiveness programs out there. Take advantage of them. If you can take advantage of them, even if you have to take a little bit less money for one particular job, if the upside is great and you're able to get rid of those loans, please do it. And lifestyle crib, it's just going to be up to you. But try to avoid the temptation of keeping up with the Joneses. Just a little bit, this is some of the properties that we've acquired at XSITE Capital. 2 of them we did as co-GP and 4 of them as the lead general partners and sponsors. And this is our team at XSITE Capital, and I'm very proud and very fortunate to be the leader of this fantastic and dynamic team. And yeah, I'll take questions at this point. I think it went over by a little bit.
No, it was all real good, relevant information. We're getting feedback already. People are enjoying this. They're getting a lot out of it. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and your insights as to the power of investing in general, and then multifamily in particular. We love to hear it. I see a question from John Chupuka. He's going back to where you talked about your utilization of rep status. So while working as a doctor, what ways were you able to access this lucrative unicorn?
Yeah. The easiest way to do it as a highly paid skilled worker is to have a spouse who is able to achieve rep status, which is just about 750 hours of material participation in real estate. So for me, my wife is creative. She a singer-songwriter, creative director. So she works from home for the most part. So she's also able to manage real estate. So she's able to manage our small portfolio of single family real estate, and she also participates on the XSITE Capital side with me. So in those ways, she's able to meet those material participation requirements. And since we file jointly, we as a unit are a real estate professional group. So the tax, since I've been able to accumulate a significant amount of depreciation, investing in multifamily real estate over the last several years, I'm pretty much able to offset most of my active income, of my earned income taxes.
Perfect. And I think that actually answers the next question by Aaron, who's asking specifically about that. So this is ways you can utilize passive income to offset W-2 income, earned income.
Yep. And for healthcare professionals, and don't quote me on this, but there's also a short-term strategy where if you have do a cost segregation on a short-term rental that you bought, and you get that depreciation, and you have an average of less than 7 days stay. I'm sure George is like a master at this, and he probably could explain this better than I can. But there's a way there that you could do it with just 1 or 2 properties or something along those lines. For the most part, obviously, there's a lot of trying to figure out where threading the needle with that strategy. So the easiest strategy for me is just buy large assets that are going to appreciate significantly and create significant wealth, not just for me, but our vast, awesome investors.
Yeah, that strategy for short-term rentals has become popular for physicians because of the challenges of meeting the main thresholds for rep status, but it lowers some of the thresholds and makes it more achievable just through that loophole. So it's been a very powerful strategy for many physicians. So there's another question by Nena. It's asking, how is an apartment building still considered a multifamily? I thought it was less than 4 units. Maybe I missed it in the presentation.
That's great. So less than 4 units is small multifamily. That's considered small multifamily. If with commercial multifamily, right? That is 5+ units. So anything less than 4 units, 4 or less, those you're still going to do recourse loans, you're still going to do. And when I say recourse loans, those are loans where you have to stand as a guarantee for the investment. But for non-recourse loans, you have access to that with 5+ units, where you're not the one standing as the guarantee for the investment itself. It's its own guarantee because it's generating income, right? So the bankers, we'll take the property from you if you don't manage this well. If you're not able to pay your mortgage, but that is not going to affect your personal credit or credit worthiness or affect your personal assets. So that's the difference there. I hope that answers your question, Nena.
Then she followed up with, is that then considered less risky for the individual?
You could consider it that, but then to manage 5+, 10+ units, to manage 100 units, 200 units, that's a business in its own now. Now you have to put a team together. So you could say that it's considered less risky from a personal asset or personal liability of standpoint, but then you stand to lose a lot too, because you obviously would have put a lot of sweat equity, a lot of cash, a lot of into this asset, and you don't want it to not do well also.
And then we have another question. Do you have an appetite for developing new multifamily units near hospitals, surgery centers, developments?
I think developers are the apex predators in commercial real estate, right? That's always the goal. I believe so, because I think that's where you get the greatest delta, especially when you've truly vertically integrated and you know how to manage the general contractors, how to manage the business plan, you know how to manage the funding or equity part of the business, how to strike that right balance, and how to kind of watch the macroeconomic conditions to understand what markets are like in that phase where you need to be developing. So at XSITE Capital, we've actually looked at some development plays recently, and we, in the next probably year or two, will probably be actively developing 1 or 2 properties, either in the economic extended stay sector or straight up just multifamily. And that's because economic extended stay acts a little bit more like multifamily, just it's like non-sexy multifamily. That's what it is. But definitely development is in the horizon, and certainly interested in it for sure.
I love that. I'm gonna follow up that question with kind of what's your big picture vision, maybe 10 years from now, 15 years from now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So my life's vision is to improve access to musculoskeletal care, and by extent of that, healthcare in general in lower to middle income countries, starting with Nigeria, where I was born and raised. So I'm very clear about what that long-term vision is. Anything that I'm doing right now is to help further the achievement of that vision. And I've been doing some of the sweat equity work, some of the investments to help achieve that currently. But in 10 years, so the last 10 years of my practice has been becoming the best clinical, academic, research physician that I could be. And I think I've finally found my own little niche. I'm not the greatest academician, but I think I am as clinically proficient as any person that I would meet. I can stack my record against anyone in that regard. So I think I have done my best to achieve clinical proficiency, efficacy with my practice. Now, the next decade of my practice, I am hoping to dedicate to furthering the expansion of global orthopedics, in Nigeria and hopefully the sub-Saharan Africa, and hopefully extend into other LMICs from there. But the way to achieve that will obviously to be able to continue to expand the cash flow from all these investments, to continue to invest actively and recycle those investments so that they continue to exponentially increase. And certainly I'm very passionate about doing hips and knees, and can't see myself not doing it for the next. So I'm still going to continue to do it. But it may just be in different settings, maybe some in the US, maybe some in other parts of the world, but I will continue to buy real estate, certainly in the US. We'll continue to have real estate plays in other places potentially. But that is the big vision, is to be able to create something that will contribute significantly to changing the landscape of musculoskeletal health in that part of the world.
And that resonates with me as an orthopedic surgeon. I think it just highlights the importance of this wealth building endeavor and how it can boost you into kind of making these other endeavors into your wildest dreams, your passion hobbies, your passion dreams. So it really speaks to the power of all these wealth building strategies that you've adopted. One question to follow up with that is, what's been like the biggest friction point? Because it seems so much moving parts. What has been the hardest part of your path thus far?
Interestingly, the hardest part of the path for me has been the identity struggles at the beginning, the mindset shift that was required to move me from the mindset of trading hours for dollars, trying to max out my income as an employed physician, and also the challenge of saying, wait, if I start investing in real estate and start asking people to come invest with me, are they going to still take me seriously as an orthopedic surgeon? Am I still going to be considered an academic surgeon? Are they going to start poo-pooing the quality of my work? If I add a complication, are they going to say it's because he is a real estate professional, also he's not focused? So a lot of that negative self-talk, where you talk yourself out of taking the bold step of taking that 1,000-mile journey that starts with our first step. A lot of that I needed to work on, and it took a while, and it took a lot of encouragement. It took a lot of talking to other folks that are doing it. It took a lot of talking to wildly successful people, and those people saying, you know what, that path is fine. It's okay. It's okay for you to be different. It's okay for you to choose a slightly different path than everyone else, but it's got to be true to you. And so obviously and a lot of that also came with reading a lot, coming up with a fantastic morning routine that includes, I read the Miracle Morning book by Howard Savers that talks about silence, so meditation, praying, whatever it is that you like to do, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, scribing, so journaling. So I do at least 3 of those things in the morning just to get myself in the right mindset, to make sure that I'm pumped and ready to go, and that I'm able to show up fully in the hospital as Dr. Julius, only ready to do the best total hip and total knee that I can do for my patients, and serve them to the best of my abilities. But then also I could flip over at night and on the weekends and be the best business person, best entrepreneur, best leader of my private equity company, and still take that education about multifamily, about business in general, to our communities, so that more and more of us could start to collaborate together and do this, because this is one thing that we've not done as well in some of our communities. And I see the tide changing, and I just want to play my part to making sure that we are truly living up to our potential, because the only way to do that is if we work together.
You certainly are playing your part, my man, and we admire and appreciate it. It's an inspiration. I think there was another question which was perfect to round things up, is how do folks reach out to you? Could you leave your contact information, an email, a website on the chat? That way folks can reach out to you with more questions, with their ideas for collaborations. I see surgery centers are on the chat there. And
definitely. So I'm putting my email directly. Oh, shoot. I put my work email. So sorry, please just ignore that. Except if you want to talk to me about joint replacement.
Even deleted it.
Okay, fantastic. If you want to talk to me, use that email. But otherwise, You can follow me on Instagram and on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably where I'm most active. I'm not really active really on social media. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be like George and the rest of them, but I now will get better. But LinkedIn, Julius, IG, I think Dr. JKO, and come check out our website, xsitecapital.com, XSITE. I'll put it right in the chat. And just see what, there are some more resources on there for you to learn. And we actually have a multifamily one-on-one course coming at XSITE Capital, where for people who don't know anything about this, you can really go deep and wide and really we just shot the course a few weeks ago. And even for people trying to do it actively, we have a pathway for them too, and templates and everything so that you can really do it if you want to do it yourself. But if you also want to collaborate, let's do it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Julius. If there's any other questions, folks, reach out to him directly. I want to thank everybody for coming on this evening. Everyone have a great weekend. We have our next webinar coming up in 2 weeks. We're actually going to have Temi Ajao coming on, talk about prolific social media presence. She's doing her thing on social media platforms. So we're really excited to learn from her in 2 weeks. Thank you again, everyone. Julius, thank you again. Bio, enjoy your trip. Everybody, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, people.
Yeah, thank you.